She wore a $50,000 gown and walked down the aisle like a queen. But what no one knew was that behind her perfect smile, she was living a silent nightmare. Then, in front of 200 guests, he slapped her. And what happened next? No one, not even he, saw coming. This isn't just a story about a wedding. It's about power, silence, and a woman who turned her pain into something unstoppable. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, hit that like button, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, let's jump into the story. The sun poured its golden light over the cliffs of Monterey Bay, painting the Grand Mira estate in warm tones. From a distance, it looked like a perfect dream. Elegant white tents, floral arches heavy with peonies and roses, and a string quartet playing soft music in the background. It was the kind of wedding people talked about for years. Inside the bridal suite, Lena Hartley sat in silence. Her dress, custom made in Paris, sparkled under the chandelier. It cost more than she had earned in her entire first year as a floral designer. Her makeup was flawless, her hair pinned into gentle waves. To everyone else, she looked like a princess from a fairy tale. But inside, Lena felt far from magical. She stared at herself in the tall mirror, her soft brown eyes reflecting something deeper, something heavier. Her hands, once full of creativity and joy, now rested still in her lap. She thought about the life she once dreamed of. A small flower shop, warm coffee in the morning, laughter with clients who became friends. That life felt like it belonged to someone else now. Nina Calder stepped into the room, her heels clicking softly on the marble floor. "You look stunning," she said, smiling gently. Lena forced a smile in return. "Thank you." Nina walked over, helping straighten the delicate veil. "I saw Gavin outside earlier. The photographers can't get enough of him in that tux. He's doing the handshake rounds already." Lena's smile faltered. Nina noticed. She lowered her voice. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," Lena said quickly. "Just nerves." But they both knew it wasn't nerves. It was something else. Something that had started quietly over a year ago, right after Gavin proposed. At first he had been kind, charming, funny. He brought her flowers every week, took her to gallery openings, told her he admired her passion. But slowly that passion became a problem. He asked her to take fewer clients, then none at all. He said it was because he wanted her to rest, to enjoy life. What followed was harder to explain. Comments that chipped away at her, confidence, sudden mood swings, constant monitoring of her phone. Every choice she made had to be approved. Gavin was always watching, always correcting, always smiling for others. Even the night before the wedding had ended in tension. A small argument about table arrangements had turned into something darker. He had grabbed her arm too hard. Not enough to leave a clear bruise, but enough to leave a mark she could feel even now. "You can still change your mind," Nina whispered, brushing Lena's cheek softly. "I can't," Lena whispered back. "Everyone's here. It's too late." Outside, 200 guests waited. Business leaders, actors, even a senator. Gavin's mother, Celeste Trevors, had planned every detail. She made it clear this wedding wasn't just about love. It was about status, legacy, and public image. Celeste entered the suite just then, tall and elegant in a pale blue gown. Her eyes scanned the room, cool and sharp. "Lena, dear," she said, offering a practiced smile. "It's time. Let's not keep the world waiting." The music began to swell outside. As the doors opened, Lena took her father's arm. The sky was a soft orange now, the sun setting behind the ocean. Everyone stood as she walked down the aisle, her steps slow and steady. Cameras flashed, whispers filled the air. Gavin stood at the altar smiling. He looked exactly as a groom should. Handsome, confident, controlled. The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged. Rings slipped onto fingers. Every moment felt like part of a well-rehearsed play. Then came the reception, Lena barely touched her champagne. She smiled on cue, greeted guests, posed for photos. The ballroom glowed with candlelight. Strings of crystal hung from the ceiling like stars. She was speaking with the family's French wine supplier, just a friendly exchange, when Gavin appeared beside her. His hand closed around her arm, hard. "Why were you laughing with him?" He whispered sharply in her ear. "He was just recommending a pairing," Lena replied, confused. "You think I'm stupid?" Before she could respond, it happened. Gavin slapped her. The sound was loud, shocking in its suddenness. The entire room went silent. The orchestra stopped. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses froze in mid-air. Lena stood still, her cheek stinging, her eyes wide. No one moved. No one spoke. For a second, time held its breath. Then Lena gently removed her veil. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She simply turned around and walked out of the ballroom, leaving behind stunned guests, a frozen groom, and the illusion of a perfect wedding. Outside, the ocean roared quietly in the distance, and just like that, the golden illusion cracked. The headlines the next morning read like a romantic mix-up. Passionate lovers spat at lavish wedding leaves guests, speechless. Bride walks out, but all is forgiven by morning. Lena Hartley stared at her phone in disbelief. None of it was true. The photos had been carefully chosen. Ones where she smiled, stood beside Gavin, or looked lovingly at the crowd. The slap was never mentioned. The silence in the ballroom, the frozen stares, the way she had walked away, it had all been erased. "Damage control," Nina said over the phone. They moved fast. Gavin's PR team must have been working overnight. Lena sat by the wide glass window of the 57th floor apartment Gavin called their new start. It looked like a dream. Polished marble floors, soft velvet chairs, priceless art on the walls, but it felt like something else, quiet, beautiful, and cold. A cage. One made of silken glass, but a cage all the same. Gavin hadn't spoken much since the incident. He came home late. He kissed her cheek like nothing had happened. He didn't apologize. Instead, he told her how lucky they were that no one made a big deal out of it. "It's all behind us now," he had said that morning, handing her a diamond bracelet. "Let's not ruin the good life we've built." Lena took it, but didn't speak. Celeste, his mother, arrived later that afternoon. Her words were as smooth as her expensive perfume. "You handled yourself with such grace," she said with a smile. "One must learn to keep private matters private, dear, especially now that you're part of this family." Lena sat still, listening, nodding where expected. Her heart felt distant. It beat quietly, like it was trying not to be noticed. Each day after that followed a schedule. Breakfast at the round marble table, a delivery of clothes from Celeste's favorite boutique, invitations to luncheons, museum tours, charity galas. Gavin wanted her to be visible, but stay graceful. She was always accompanied, always watched. Her phone was replaced with a new one. Her old number was shut down. Her emails were monitored under the name of cybersecurity protection. Friends stopped calling. Some stopped responding altogether. Only Nina stayed close. She visited once a week, always smiling, always light, but with eyes that searched Lena's face for cracks. "You're disappearing," Nina said quietly during a walk in the apartment's garden. "You don't even sound like you anymore." "I'm fine," Lena replied, almost like a recording. Everything's fine, but it wasn't. One evening, Gavin hosted a dinner for international investors. The dining room was filled with voices, laughter, expensive wine, and well-rehearsed stories about success. Lena sat at his side, smiling when needed, speaking when spoken to. That's when she saw him, Julian Vale, the sommelier from the wedding. He had been kind to her once, simply recommending a wine and complimenting her taste in florals. She had remembered that moment not because of what he said, but because he had looked at her like she mattered. Now he stood quietly at the end of the table, pouring wine with practiced hands. His eyes met hers for a brief moment. No words, just a look. But it shook something loose in her. After the dinner, as guests left and the noise faded, Lena found a small folded note tucked under her dessert plate. You are not invisible. Your voice matters. If you ever need someone to listen, leave a single red flower outside your door. She read it again and again, heart pounding. That night, she walked through the apartment, looking at everything around her. Every luxury item, every soft rug and shining floor. She had once dreamed of living in a place like this, but she hadn't imagined living like this. She stood at the window looking out over the city. The lights below glittered like stars. It was beautiful, yes, but it was also endless. How many other women were trapped in glass towers, silenced by comfort and status? She thought of the slap again, not just the pain, but the silence that followed. How not a single person had come to her side. How even her own voice had felt too small to use. But maybe it wasn't too late. The next morning, a single red camellia bloomed in a vase outside their door. A flower that didn't belong. Lena picked it up and placed it gently in the center of the table. A quiet act of rebellion. Something had changed. She wasn't ready to fight. Not yet. But she had stopped pretending, and that was the first step. The note had been simple. A red flower placed outside the apartment door. That was the signal. Lena didn't know what she expected when she left the camellia there that morning. Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. 2 days passed. Gavin left town for a business trip. Celeste was busy with charity events. The apartment was quiet. Lena walked through the rooms like a ghost, her thoughts heavier than the silence around her. Then on the third night it happened. A small envelope was slipped under her door. It had no name, no return address, just a neatly typed message. Tomorrow. 3 p.m. Conservatory Cafe, Table 4. Come alone. She held the note in her hands, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Part of her knew it was risky, but the other part, the stronger, quieter part, knew it was something she had to do. At exactly 2:45 the next day, Lena left the apartment dressed in a soft beige coat and sunglasses. She took the elevator down without telling the staff where she was headed. The Conservatory Cafe sat inside a small greenhouse in the city's botanical gardens. It was filled with flowers she used to work with: roses, peonies, lavender, wild orchids. The smell of earth and growth felt like a memory. At table 4, Julian Vale was already waiting. He stood when he saw her, offering a gentle smile. Thank you for coming. Lena sat down without speaking at first. She studied his face. There was no pity in his eyes, no judgment, just quiet concern. You shouldn't have reached out, she said softly. If they find out, they won't, Julian replied. I've been careful. I've seen what happens to people who ask too many questions around Gavin's family. I wasn't going to let that happen to you. Lena looked away. You don't know me. I remember the flowers you chose for your wedding, he said. They told me everything. You picked ones that meant strength and clarity. But no one else seemed to notice. That made her smile, just barely. You know flower language? My mother was a gardener. She taught me more than just wine. Lena sighed. I don't know what to do anymore. They've made me disappear. My work, my friends, even my name feels different now. Julian leaned forward slightly. You're not alone. You just don't see the others yet. There are people Gavin's family has hurt. People like you. And some of them are ready to help, if you are. Lena stared at him. Why? Because sometimes you don't run from fire. You run toward the one holding water. He handed her a card, blank, except for a phone number. If you call this number, ask for Margot, he said. She knows what they've done. She's been investigating them for years. Lena took the card and placed it carefully into her pocket. Over the next few weeks, Lena played her role as expected, smiling beside Gavin at a fundraiser, laughing quietly at Celeste's social club, wearing the jewelry, saying the right things. But at night, she called the number. Margot Finn was not what Lena expected. She was older, with wild gray hair and a deep voice. She spoke with calm confidence, like someone who had lived through storms and knew how to read the sky. "I knew your Aunt Nora," Margot said during their first call. "She married into money like you. She tried to speak out about some things and then she disappeared. Officially it was a car crash, but I've never believed that story." Lena's chest tightened. "What does that have to do with Gavin?" "More than you think. The Travers family doesn't just hide problems, they erase them. I've been tracking their financial records, their social connections, their private security arrangements. And I think your aunt got too close to something they didn't want exposed." Margot sent her files, redacted emails, travel logs, old photographs. Lena read them all, night after night, heart pounding with every new detail. Celeste was always at the center, calm, smiling, perfectly put together. But behind it all, she pulled strings. Gavin, Lena realized, wasn't just controlling. He was shaped by the family machine, a product of silence, tradition, and power. Meanwhile, Julian stayed close, but careful. He never texted or called, but sometimes she'd find a single flower left at her cafe table. A message, a reminder. She began to gather her own notes, copies of receipts, conversations overheard at events, strange appointments Gavin never explained. Slowly, she was building a story, a true one, and she wasn't alone anymore. Nina returned with a lawyer's contact. "Just in case," she whispered. "You'll know when to call." Lena didn't know what her next move was, but she knew the path forward wasn't about escape anymore. It was about truth. Something was growing inside her, just like the roses she used to plant. Quiet, slow, steady. She wasn't the same bride who had stood in a ballroom full of strangers, and the family that had tried to erase her. They hadn't seen her bloom yet. The night of the gala had finally arrived. The Grand Mira Foundation Ball was one of the most talked about events of the year. Politicians, business leaders, and celebrities filled the ballroom where Lena Hartley had once stood as a bride. This time, though, she wasn't walking down the aisle. She was walking into the fire on her own terms. Dressed in a simple, elegant gown of deep emerald green, Lena looked like the woman the world expected her to be, polished, graceful, quiet. But inside she felt nothing like the woman who had been slapped in front of hundreds and forced to smile through pain. Tonight, she wasn't performing. Julian was already there, stationed at the wine table, pretending to serve but watching closely. Nina stood across the room near the entrance. Margot was backstage with a laptop and a backup team ready to act. They had all worked together for weeks, gathering evidence, planning the timing, securing support. Every move had been quiet, careful, calculated. Lena had everything she needed. Signed documents, hidden recordings, and financial records that linked Gavin's family to cover-ups, silencing payments, and at least one suspicious death, her aunt, Nora's. And tonight, she would speak. Celeste Travers stood on stage delivering her speech about legacy and leadership, her diamond earrings catching the light. She had no idea what was coming. Lena waited until the applause began. Then, she stepped forward. "Excuse me," Lena said into the microphone, her voice clear and steady. "Before we continue, I'd like to share a few words." The room quieted. Celeste turned, her smile freezing mid-expression. Gavin, seated at the front, stood halfway in alarm. Lena held up a small flash drive. "I was told for years to stay quiet, to be grateful, to smile even when I was hurting. But silence only helps those who do harm. Tonight I choose to speak." The screen behind her lit up. The audience turned to see what was playing. First, a photo of Lena and Gavin, happy, engaged, then the footage, grainy security camera clips, bank transfers to silence former employees, voice recordings of Gavin's threats, legal documents, showing her aunt's crash had been reported differently than what the original police files showed. Gasps filled the room, murmurs spread like fire. And then, the audio from the wedding night. "I made you. Without me, you're nothing. Gavin's voice played, sharp and cold. Talk to anyone about this, and I'll make you disappear, just like Nora. That was all it took. Lena didn't need to say more. She stepped aside as the room erupted. Reporters scrambled. Guests whispered. Some left their seats in shock. Others simply stared. Gavin moved toward her, fast, face red with rage. But before he reached her, 2 plain-clothed officers stepped. "In Mr. Trevor's?" one asked calmly. "We need to speak with you." Celeste tried to speak, tried to spin the story like she always did. But this time, no one listened. Her voice faded into the chaos around her. Lena stood tall, calm, unmoved. Outside, camera crews had already gathered. Word had spread fast. What had started as a quiet mission was now a storm. Julian found her as the ballroom emptied. "You did it," he said quietly. Lena shook her head. "We did it." She walked past the stunned faces out into the night. This time she wasn't running. She wasn't hiding. The next morning, the headlines were different. Bride breaks. Silence, shocking truth behind the Trevor's legacy. Inside. The fall of one of the city's most powerful families. From victim to voice, Lena Hartley speaks out. The news was everywhere. Gavin was taken into custody. Celeste faced questioning. Board members stepped down. Donations were pulled. The carefully built empire of silence was crumbling. But Lena didn't celebrate. She didn't seek revenge. She sought change. A month later, she opened the Bloom Center, a quiet space in the city where women could come for help, support, and healing. It was decorated with soft light plants and flowers, roses especially. Every woman who entered received one. A symbol of survival, a reminder of growth. Julian opened a small vineyard upstate and donated part of the profits to the center. Nina worked full-time managing legal support for women trying to escape similar situations. Margot continued her investigations, now with public support. As for Lena, she returned to designing, not for show, not for money, but for herself. She sat in her small studio, surrounded by petals and stems, hands steady once again. She worked quietly, carefully, not to hide, but to build something new. She had once believed her silence would keep her safe. Now, she knew that her voice was what made her strong. Lena didn't just escape the cage, she grew beyond it. And that, in the end, was her greatest victory. The bloom had broken the chain.